Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to our Human Performance webinar. My name is James Grigson, and today I'm joined by a few special guests. Firstly, we have Jack Halley, Fusion Sport consultant, making his return to the program. We have Hewitt Tomlin, the co-founder and CEO of TeamBuildr, and we are joined by our special guest, Shane Lehane from the Melbourne Rebels. He's the lead strength and conditioning coach. So we'll be getting to these people, and I'm very excited to get to these people in just a few secs. But for those that are new and joining to these webinars are to promote best practices for your athlete management system. Whether you're using the Smartabase athlete management system or you're not, we hope that these webinars are giving you insights, best tips, tricks on how to better use your athlete management system in your organization. So today we will be doing a spotlight on integrating of third-party data into your athlete management system. And in particular, we'll be spotlighting the TeamBuildr strength and conditioning platform, which I'll get Hewitt to run through in just a second. We're very happy to have Hewitt on board, very happy to have an integration partnership with TeamBuildr. And from an athlete management perspective, third-party integrations are fantastic. Whether it be strength and conditioning data, whether it be timing gate data, whether it be information coming in from third-party softwares from a medical perspective or your front office, it's fantastic to be able to have these integrations at your disposal, be able to pull the information into one place and consolidate your thinking, consolidate your data, and basically have a more informed opinion. So from my perspective, that is the perfect way to describe why people want to have this automation. If I can use that word, make that word up on the spot, meaning that we can automatically pull in third-party data at our disposal and automatically to be able to pull it all into one place, basically to save time and to stop you from manually uploading and importing files into your system and just get on with coaching. So just a bit of housekeeping for you. If you're watching this retroactively on YouTube, please use the comment section below and type in any and all questions that you do have. We will see to those. Really excited for the live Q&A. We have a ton of people from Australia and the US on this call. So that'll happen towards the end of this chat, but please feel free to use either the Q&A or the chat function to type in your questions, send them through, and we'll bank them for the time at the end of the session. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Hewitt to give us a brief introduction on the TeamBuildr platform. Hewitt, you're on mute, my friend.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was looking for the button. You think I would be an expert by now, but apparently not. Hi, everyone. Hewitt Tomlin here. I am the co-founder and CEO of TeamBuildr. TeamBuildr, in short, is a software program that coaches use to write their training programs online. And I remember when I started this company, I think 7 or 8 years ago, a guy from Australia reached out to us, Lachlan Wilmot, and decided to give it a shot. And just like that, we found out that Lachie was a well-liked person in the country. And before we knew it, we were working with many, many Australians and folks in that region. And we're proud to say that next to the US, we work with more folks in Australia than any other country. So not further down the road, we met Smartabase. And I just want to say, Smartabase is definitely a preferred partner of TeamBuildr, not just because of the great product that they offer and the synergy that we've been able to do together, but the people who work there have just been extremely exceptional, and the reputation is fantastic. And we definitely look up to Smartabase and the reputation in the market. That being said, I'll take some time to do a little bit of an overview here. I know these things are not the most exciting, so I just want to give a brief rundown of what exactly it is that we do. So obviously, as I mentioned, strength and conditioning coaches primarily use TeamBuildr to write their training programs, usually as an alternative or in addition to Excel. Our value proposition is that we want to help coaches save time writing training programs and doing so in a way that allows them to make their programs more individualized and more specific to their training populations. We like to think that the actual technical process of writing a program is easier, and TeamBuildr makes a strength coach's life easier as well. So we're happy to say that we work with folks across the spectrum. Many professional teams use TeamBuildr, as well as many teams at lower levels of competition. We built a product that we believe is flexible and usable in a variety of settings, that we bring value no matter where the strength coach is practicing their trade. So with that being said, I'll just mention quickly Right now, at the moment, we are offering free strength and conditioning programming templates. These are a few at-home training templates that incorporate a very low level of implements and body weight programs. Of course, this probably was more impactful a few weeks ago when remote training was really kind of a sudden occurrence, but perhaps if you're still interested, you'd like to take a look at this. I will share links in this presentation in the chat, and you're welcome to take a look at those. After all, it is a free resource, and you can maybe take a look at TeamBuildr while you explore those training programs as well. So with that being said, that wraps up my portion. Again, I'm happy to be here. I'm really grateful to be a part of this presentation and to learn from this content as well.
Thank you, Hewitt. Really appreciate it. So today what we'll be looking at is the journey of the data from TeamBuildr. Once you begin using TeamBuildr, how does that look inside of the Smartabase athlete management system? And then we'll throw to Shane so he can show a day in the life of his usage of this platform as well. So to highlight how the information comes in, I'm going to hand it over to Smartabase consultant Jack Halley, who will talk through that information in the back end of Smartabase and how he basically brings it together and makes it look pretty on the front end.
Thank you, James. I'm just trying to get my screen up to share on this end. Are you able to invite me to do that, James? Okay. I think we should be good to go there. Have you got that, James?
Yeah, awesome.
Excellent. Okay. So like James said, we're going to have a look at the journey, how the data comes across from TeamBuildr via the API, and then eventually how that populates into dashboards and reports. And then Shane will touch on that a little bit later. So we're just looking here at a report for an athlete. So these columns here across the top, this information has been populated via that API from TeamBuildr. So from a Smartabase point of view, these fields are simply just text and number fields. There's no calculations currently in this form as we look at it here. These are just the values that we get directly from the API. So with a lot of our clients, we roll out this form as the basic sort of template with our clients. So this doesn't come with any built-in calculations. This is just here to accept that raw data from TeamBuildr. But from that point onwards, this is where Smartabase really comes into its own. As a builder yourself in the system, you're then able to add further calculations to pull certain metrics out of that data. That will allow you to then look at athletes' 1RMs, look at their progressions over time, and look at their various volume loads for pulling exercises, pushing exercises, things like that. So as we see it now, this just is a lot of the programming data that we're getting across, sets and reps, weights, etc. But as we dive further into the builder, we can start to have a look at some of the calculations that we can build out. So right now, as I look at this record, we're actually in the main site of Smartabase. So we're actually looking at live records of athletes and historic records of athletes. If I actually jump back across into the builder site, we can then see more of the nuts and bolts of what's actually going on in this event form. So for a lot of you who only interact with the main site of Smartabase, you may not have seen this side before, but for the people that actually create the forms, build extra calculations into forms, this is the side that they're more familiar with, and this is where you can start to really customize what you want to do with that data, and then ultimately how you want to display it in reports and dashboards. So starting at the top again, we can see this sort of generic template table that we were just looking at in the main site. But further across to that, I've started to build out some extra calculations. So obviously one of the most important things that S&C coaches and sports scientists are going to be looking for within their S&C data is 1RMs and estimate 1RMs and the ability to track that over time. So within this table itself, I've built out a few calculations here that are using some of the most common estimates of 1RM. So we got 3 examples here. So that's just tagged onto the end of our table here. And that will mean that any exercise that populates in this first row, based on the reps and the weight that is entered against that exercise, it will have an estimate 1RM at the end here. So as we scroll down, I've built this form out specifically for 3 exercises: bench press, back squat, and power clean. that's just from a point of view of saving a little bit of time. But for someone like Shane, who works on the ARU site, their equivalent of this form has hundreds of different exercises that are built out in this manner. So going through these, this section here is looking at estimate 1RMs for those particular exercises just for this session alone. But we then have the ability to, in that same record, generate the historic maxes for those exercises as well. Further to that, we can do the same thing using relative 1RMs, so relative to an athlete's body weight. So obviously, if we're in a situation where we want to compare a 70 kilogram athlete with a 100 kilogram athlete's bench press 1RM, using a relative score then allows us to do that a little bit more accurately. Further to that, we're able to track volume load over time. So there's some simple calculations there that we can add into the form to get Smartabase to spit that out. And one of the most important things is when you're looking at some of this data, you want to have an idea of an athlete's 1RM over a really long period of time. Someone might be at the club for 2, 3, 4 years. If they're using TeamBuildr every second day, they're going to have thousands and thousands of records. Especially with forms like this and tables, they tend to take up a little bit more space in the system. And to load a dashboard with thousands of records over time for a single athlete, let alone a squad of maybe 50, 60 athletes that you might have in NFL and things like that, it can start to get really cumbersome on the system. But if you have the ability to pull these historic 1RMs into every record, it would mean that when you actually load that data into your dashboard, you're only ever having to load the most recent record for each athlete to then see an insight into their history. Further down here, we have some linked calculations from some of our other integrations. So in this example, I've got some coming across from GymAware. So this is a great example again of how customizable Smartabase can be. We're not limited to just working in one single form or one single area. In this particular example, we're able to pull across information from other forms within our system. And that helps us collate that information and then present that in reports and in dashboards. So again, speaking to the example of Shane and his work that he's done on the ARU site, they have a massive summary form in their backend, which is pulling across information, not only from multiple different integration sources, but also from daily check-in forms, wellness diaries, manually entered anthropometry data, and it all comes into one single form in the back end, which they can then use to minimize the amount of load pressure that we're putting on the system by only having to source one form. Things have changed slightly in the short term, in that what we're able to do in the dashboard builder has changed to a degree where we don't have to have a single summary form like what the ARU still work off of, which has made life a little bit easier. But it still gives us that option in the back end if we want to be able to pull things together like that. So that's just a brief summary of what we can sort of do in the back end in terms of the builder site. I might hand back to James now, and he can intro Shane into looking into the ARU, specifically the Melbourne Rebels dashboard.
Thank you, Jack. Yeah, that just to clarify, I had a question come through in the Q&A. What Jack just went through is what we would do following your session in TeamBuildr. So what we mean by that is the information must be first, and the session must be first done inside of the TeamBuildr platform, and then that raw data is pulled in automatically into the Smartabase platform, either into that raw format that Jack showed you, and then you're able to display it in various different ways as we're about to show. But then to Jack's point, we're able to start looking at further calculations, comparison calculations, estimates, total weekly volume load or monthly load, or whatever you're looking at in terms of your calculations for the platform. So just to be very clear, the TeamBuildr session has to have been done, and then the Smartabase system will suck that information into our backend. So what we'll do, Jack, if you want to get Shane's dashboard up, we will throw it over to Shane. Shane, again, as I had said, is a lead strength and conditioning coach at the Melbourne Rebels and works with the platform. So what we're going to be looking at today is just an example of how he uses the platform. You'll notice that on the left-hand side of a lot of these dashboards, there appears to be something missing, and that would be the athletes' names themselves. So we have de-identified data here. Please be aware that obviously we have to do that for privacy concerns. So there will be some elements, especially on the left-hand side, the about column and who it is, that won't be showed today. So I'll hand it over to Shane to talk through his day in the life with this dashboard himself. So Shane, after a TeamBuildr session has taken place, and you're going into the Smartabase platform to look at this dashboard, talk us through what you're looking for and how you go about it.
James, can I just preface that, because I know there's a question coming through there on the group. For me, first of all, the big incentive of working with you guys and working with TeamBuildr is the ease of use and the integration on these components. So for me personally, as a guy, in the field, the bit I enjoy is coaching, not so much the administration and me manually doing the data management. So certainly the big incentive for me to work with you guys and with Hewitt is to automate a lot of that program creating and the data management. So for anyone out there that's listening in that is more on the practical side, definitely working across both of your platforms, there's a great opportunity to ease up some of your workflows in that sense. So yeah, look, in terms of the day-to-day, how this runs for us, I'll create our TeamBuildr athletic performance programs on the TeamBuildr website. Those programs get delivered through to the athletes, either through iPads, which are set up in the gym, or through their mobile phone devices if we're traveling for away games and using external facilities. So as soon as that bit is done for me, the players manually enter their own training data into the TeamBuildr apps, press save, and then that data is automatically pushed across to you guys at Smartabase, which auto-populates all of our dashboards. So it's taken out a big component of the administration for me, essentially. So in terms of the dashboard here that we're looking at, and there's a couple of others, probably the one at the top there, the Melbourne Rebels fitness testing data. I don't know if that's de-identified, but yeah, these are good examples. So I guess a lot of our acute observations of the sessions I do through the TeamBuildr platform, through the completion report or the workout results to see maybe acutely what had been done in the session. But the longitudinal tracking of our athletes and to see how they're going is done through Smartabase and particularly through this dashboard. So with being part of the Melbourne Rebels, we're in a centralized system where essentially as a strength and conditioning coach, I have a number of stakeholders who I need to report to. Our head of performance, our head coach, and then also international stakeholders too, international fitness staff, international coaches. So for me, I was keen to centralize everything and to benchmark our guys against elite standards, against the world-class standards. So as you see here, we have a number of variables here. They're all their strength and power data, which is brought in across from TeamBuildr. Also fitness testing results, reactive strength, relative leg power results, body weight, max velocity. So a number of different variables there have been dragged in from GPS, some manual entry from Swift. All our TeamBuildr work is automated. So really, like on the dashboard like this, you're getting a pretty holistic picture of the historic best for each individual athletes, where they're currently sitting, and then how those benchmark against the elite standards.
And Hewitt, the dashboards that you have at the top here, Jack, if you can just scroll up for a sec, mate. Once you see, just in terms of your journey here on the system, once you come into the system, you're seeing a flag, or you see, let's say, an athlete has, over the last couple of weeks trended down. If you're looking at a flag within the system, what's your next approach here? Are you at all navigating through the system to see any physio treatments or anything like that, or is this just a conversation starter for you to then go to the athletes or go to your other staff? How do you work with things like that?
Yeah, no, look, this data is obviously taken in conjunction with any medical data or wellness data which is coming in, which is also stored on the Smartabase platform. So there's a couple of things. If the athlete is fit and it's entirely a physical training question, then something like this offers me an opportunity to sit down with an athlete, say, like it's very visually obvious where the athlete is at, what the international standards are at. It might be a conversation starter with a particular athlete if there's no physical limitation. If there's an obvious trend down over the last couple of weeks or couple of months, then the information on the dashboard is a starting point for a wider conversation with medical staff, perhaps with technical coaches, where we'll sit down together and discuss where the athlete is at, why that might be occurring, and what are some of the interventions we can put in place to overcome that.
Fantastic. Well, was there anything further that you wanted to talk about on this dashboard? Did you have anything else that you wanted to explain?
No, well, I guess if anyone's looking at the conditional formatting there, that's for us, a lot of our benchmarking is done externally by Rugby Australia. So like the advantage here for me is that I'm not the one deciding if the athlete is good or bad in these various different physical metrics. They're essentially provided by Rugby Australia, and then having all of their physical data stored in one spot is definitely eases up conversation use with a player. It's very obvious to the player that it's all factual, objective data, well presented. So it's a very easy conversation to have with the player about where they're at, where they need to get to, and then discuss some of the steps that we can go through to get them to the levels that are required.
So from a coaching perspective, are you having those conversations with them when you're looking at their benchmark, or is that done by other members of staff?
No, 100%. I'm definitely having day to day. I'll be referencing this dashboard for conversations on the gym floor, on the field, but also probably the advantage of maybe centralizing this data is that this dashboard here is a wider conversation piece for other coaching staff too, particularly for the technical coaches, for the medical staff. And as you probably know, anyone who's working in any team sport is that often, the head coaches or the technical coaches are the ones that perhaps have most sway when you can tie in physical data to some of the on-field performance metrics. So this dashboard here is shared across our technical staff, so coaches can easily look up and reference at any point in time without me having to generate a report for them where an athlete is currently sitting in terms of their own previous personal best, but then also the international standards. And it just encourages a more holistic conversation, I think, across the various departments in our team.
So when you're talking about having this on the gym floor, do you just have the computer on the gym floor, or are you using a phone, or are you printing this out? How do you do that?
I'll have this on the gym floor. I guess for any of the athletes, a lot of their work is delivered through the iPads or through the phones on the TeamBuildr platform if we're in the gym. And then I'll always have this probably open along with some of the wellness or check-in data, so I can frame some of the conversations of the day. Essentially, maybe there's a particular athlete that we're working on, and we can work in one of these particular metrics, and we can reference that, or it's very visually obvious to the athlete. And so coupled with this dashboard, coupled with our wellness data, I'll have this open at a central point and then reference back to it as the session goes on, probably before, during, and after.
And just one final bit from me is you spoke about being very objective with the athletes and having this information, and it's very black and white. And just looking at it, it is very black and white in terms of where I'm sitting if I'm the athlete here looking at this. Talk to me about how much maybe easier these conversations are to have when you've got, as a coach, when you've got this type of objective data instead of maybe being relatively subjective and not having a sounder standards and things like that.
Yeah, well, there's a number of points here. One, I guess the conversation is instantaneous as well. Like for me, some of my previous reporting strategies were pretty cumbersome and took a fair bit of time, whereas there's instant feedback between the TeamBuildr platform and between the dashboard here. So there's no argument there. There's no come back to me in a week's time and I'll do up a physical report and we'll see where we're at. There's an instantaneous conversation there of objective data which the athlete is inputting themselves and is getting pushed into Smartabase and referenced against our benchmark system, so that it becomes not that it's ever a personal conversation, but it becomes a very objective baseline to start that conversation. So for me, I think it gives a lot more validity and trust, essentially, to start a conversation with an athlete. It's definitely there's no personal component there. It's a very objective starting point to start a training conversation. Yeah,
I definitely get that feel just from looking at this report. There's a question coming from the audience around whether the athletes can track and / see their progress. I think that's maybe more pertaining to do athletes have access to this data in any shape or way?
I'll hold the athletes won't be able to see this data. This will be kind of a central point for me, but I guess the advantage of the TeamBuildr app is that they're on the gym floor. They have the ability to track and look up all their historical bests, maxes, how they've been tracking the last couple of months. So it's a lot of our acute data feedback is done through TeamBuildr app, and then the more longitudinal tracking of athletes, I use Smartabase primarily to do that.
Hey, James, I have a quick question here for Shane. Shane, when you turn around and apply interventions or modifications, I'm assuming you do so at an individual level in TeamBuildr, but do you also find yourself doing it at, say, like the group level? Do you ever apply interventions to, say, a positional group?
Yeah, 100%. I guess, especially with the nature of our competition. So for anyone who's unfamiliar with Super Rugby, it's a competition played across 5 continents. There's teams in Argentina, South Africa, New Zealand, Japan. So the travel is considerable, and how athletes rock up after those trips can obviously be quite variable. So probably one of the advantages of the TeamBuildr platform is I have my central calendar, the Super Rugby calendar. There's positional groups below that, and then if there needs to be a modification, to an individual because of an injury, I can do that. But if there's a modification that needs to be made to volume load or changing of days or whatever we need to do, I'll do that centrally through the Super Rugby calendar.
Do you feel that after the TeamBuildr and Smartabase integration started coming together, was your programming more fluid? Did you find yourself being more fluid in terms of how frequently you applied interventions or modifications to your programming?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess like what the dashboard does for me too, not only is it a very obvious and stark picture of the holistic state of the athlete to the athlete, but also it's very easy for me to reference very quickly where guys are at and then make alterations to their TeamBuildr programs off the back of that, rather than waiting every 4, 5, 6 weeks, whatever you might be, changing your program cycles. This is obviously constantly being updated through the flow from TeamBuildr into Smartabase, and it allows me to make some acute interventions too if I feel I need to.
Shane, was there anything further that you wanted to get off your chest today, mate? I know we had a couple of discussion points, and as we predicted, the Q&A took us in some different directions. Was there anything further that you wanted to get off your chest?
No, look, I think that the big one for me, as I just reiterated at the start, is I'm not a data nerd, and that's not my forte. I think my passion is in the coaching and delivery on the gym floor, and so like working with you guys, it has just simplified all the data collection and the data visualization process for me, and has made it much easier for me to report directly to the stakeholders in Rugby Australia, head of performance, head coaches, where there's no give me 2 or 3 days and I'll work out a report here on this athlete. It's been automated and updated all the time, and definitely frees up more time for me for the coaching process and the interpretation of the data to deliver the most proficient program I can.
Couldn't say it better myself, mate. That's look, in essence, that's the key for looking at any sort of integration with your athlete management system, whether it's TeamBuildr to Smartabase or it's other, we can see examples in here from GymAware and timing gates and GPS into your own athlete management environment. That is the key purpose of integration, exactly as Shane has said, freeing up your time to do what you do best, and provide that automation. I'm just going to get Jack Halley to pull up another example that we have done up internally, which just shows some TeamBuildr information. As we are showing this, I'm going to prompt any further questions in the chat function or the Q&A. If you're a talker like me, then you can raise your hand. There's a raise hand function, and we'll be able to allow you to speak as opposed to typing. So we're just going to wait for some of those questions to come through. Yeah, Stephen, I believe I've got your email from the sign up, Stephen. So I will reach out to you following this, and we can get something going. Other questions to come through in the Q&A. As we get those questions coming through, what we can see here on Jack's dashboard is just a volume load overview from a squad perspective. So looking at the total squad and their volume over the last what appears to be 10 days or a little over 10 days, potentially 2 weeks, and looking at some acute chronic workload standards through the calculations that Jack was referencing at the top of the call, looking at a change in load from week to week. And as we scroll down, beginning to look at, okay, how each athlete, because we do have de-identified athletes on our, sorry, not de-identified, we have fake athletes here on our Smartabase site on the left-hand side. How do those athletes compare when we're looking at those other relative standards, when we're looking at, an exercise like bench press, and we're factoring in other things around, power and other metrics. We have an anonymous question come through. What variables can go from TeamBuildr to Smartabase? Just resistance training aspects, or could questionnaires go as well? Question mark. I will speak to that just for now, and then probably throw to Hewitt as well. So the TeamBuildr platform, of course, has wellness questionnaires inbuilt within the system. So if your club or your organization is used to using those wellness questionnaires as a way to fill in that information, then of course that we can look to pull that information across. Currently, that does not exist in the API, but it is something that we could easily do. More often than not, and Shane might be able to speak to this as well, the organizations that have both platforms will typically do their wellness inside of Smartabase, but really it's just a personal choice of the organization. From my perspective, I've seen a lot of them mainly do their wellness in Smartabase as opposed to TeamBuildr, but at the end of the day, because of the API, it doesn't really necessarily matter where that wellness is done. Shane, are you guys doing your wellness in TeamBuildr, or are you doing it in Smartabase?
Yeah, primarily to Smartabase, which is all the Australian franchises are part of that with the Rugby Australia agreement. But we have used at various points, I've used for individual athletes some separate wellness questionnaires for guys that might have, are acutely managing injuries and training load. I've got a couple of guys with coming off the back of ankle surgery that have issues with plyometric load. So there might be just one or two questions that I'll put in their TeamBuildr to say, where are we at with your ankle today? A couple of things which might reference more acutely the training session rather than their overall wellness. So primarily Smartabase, but I definitely avail of the function in TeamBuildr as well.
Hewitt, did you have any more comment to that?
Yeah, I actually, it's a fairly recent development that we actually integrated the wellness questionnaires to be imported into Smartabase. That was done just a few weeks or a few months ago for a client here in the States. So that actually is new functionality. I was just briefly looking for a full documentation of the types of data that does get imported into Smartabase. But another thing I wanted to mention was that when a coach writes a training program into TeamBuildr, a pre-planned program where sessions that have not been trained on by athletes yet, that programming actually does make its way into Smartabase as well. And then after the fact, when an athlete trains, then the training data actually makes its way into Smartabase also.
We have a user of both platforms at the moment, Pete Calhane from Australia, who has just mentioned for everyone on the call that in his environment, he will use the TeamBuildr application for strength data and wellness check-in, and because that eliminates a need for the athletes to sign into multiple platforms. So in their environment, he was just speaking to the fact that what they do is have the wellness and the TeamBuildr information obviously done on TeamBuildr, and have that information and use Smartabase separately for other management. We have a question come in from Bob. Bob has asked, is this best utilized for only a select few number of exercises, or have you found a good way to look at a large number of exercises, for example, variation of a back squat? Jack, did you want to speak to that, or Hewitt, or Shane?
I'm happy to. Oh, you go ahead.
No. I guess I'll just say, I don't know which is preferred, but I know that all of the above will work. Obviously, different exercise variations will retain a unique ID so that they can make their way into Smartabase separately of one another. But also the function of tagging exercises in TeamBuildr, you can tag exercises in order to categorize them, so that variations of an exercise can still be, the data associated with those exercises can be aggregated using the tag categorization system in Smartabase.
Yeah, and to speak to what Hewitt's just said, Smartabase works exactly the same. So the calculations that I was showing previously in the back end, in the builder site, they work off of referencing the precise exercise name. So there's nothing stopping anyone going into the site, building out specific calculations for each specific variation of an exercise, not just generic ones. And once you have that information, you can do whatever you want with it in terms of building into a dashboard. So if you wanted to display progressions over 20 different exercises over a period of time, you have every means of doing that if you wanted to.
Yeah, and just to speak to it, Bob. The example today, obviously, we're just showing a couple of different examples today, so we wouldn't have the breadth of maybe row variations, for example, or single arm exercises. Today, you're just seeing some examples around back squat, bench press, and power clean just on this dashboard itself. Any other questions to come through on the Q&A? While that's being done, I'll get Jack just to move around a little bit more on the dashboard that's on the screen, so you can kind of see the different ways that we're visualizing it, looking at each individual athlete over time, their estimated YRM using the various different formulas for the 3 select exercises. Just some housekeeping. Next week will be at the same time, but a different day. So as everyone's starting to get back to work, especially here in Australia, and I know in some places in the US, we're going to be choppy and changing these webinars. Of course, they're recorded, so you can see those informations retroactively. So next week, the same time, but it'll be a Thursday afternoon / evening for the US, and a Friday morning for the people in the APAC area. It's 8 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Friday, the 29th of May, and it is 3 in the West and 6 in the East. I believe that's how you guys do it. In the US on the Thursday, the 28th. Just a question come in from Jay. We use AMS. Would be great to have a quick chat after the presentation or another time. Yes, of course, Jay. More than happy to have a conversation. That's a good cue for me. Thank you. You're reading my mind. If you have any questions and you're not a Smartabase user, it's james@fusionsport.com. I can put that in the chat. And for any questions around TeamBuildr, I believe it's Hewitt@teambuildr.com.
Correct.
Fantastic. So we'll put those in the chat. If you do have a Smartabase consultant, please go to them with any sort of information that you saw today. If you don't have a central point at Smartabase, just use me again, james@fusionsport.com. We have another question come in. How long might it take to set this up as a starter how much time would this take to set up as a starter / how hard is it to do it? Do you help with this? Hewitt, from a TeamBuildr perspective, how hard is this, and do you help with it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So our free trial is specifically 14 days because what we found is that an account can be set up fairly quickly within that time range. I've seen coaches devote a couple hours in a single day and basically have a functioning TeamBuildr account. The primary function would be building your exercise database. If you take an hour to build out the exercises in your TeamBuildr database and tag and categorize them, then that's essentially the bedrock foundation to having a TeamBuildr account. From there, it's simply a matter of writing your training programs the same way you would take the time to do so in Excel. So we recommend 1 week of dense work in TeamBuildr can get an account up and running fully.
Yeah, sorry, Shane, you go for it.
Yeah, I just the one thing I'd say on that too is just to avail of the support both from Smartabase and from TeamBuildr. I think like for me, there was a broad understanding of what I wanted my dashboards to do and how I wanted the programming to look, but obviously these guys are domain experts in this space. I think if you have an idea or a concept of how you would like your data to be presented or to be stored or your programming to be done, then come to you with that concept and then grow it out from there. That was definitely the process for, say, creating the dashboards for us. It's speaking with Hewitt and speaking with the Fusion guys, getting our API all linked up, and then just having a sit down for basically an hour and a half discussing what I would like to do, and essentially working together to kind of build that out. But it's not as intimidating a process as what it seems.
Yeah, from a Smartabase perspective, a whole site in terms of athlete management, depending on your spec and needs and size of organization, on average, 15 to 45 days in terms of being able to have everything inside of athlete management. So talking medical, wellness, training load, GPS, the whole shebang, if I can use that phrase. But in terms of something like this here, strength and conditioning, and to Shane's point, visualizing that strength and conditioning data, we take a very support heavy approach with our service, meaning that yes, you might have people inside of your organization who can jump on and create these dashboards, as we've seen in other webinars. But to Shane's point, just sitting down with a concept with people like Jack and our other fantastic Smartabase consultants, you'll be able to go from, you know, a concept or a twinkle in your eye to something like what we saw today within an hour or two, and some time, you know, for Jack to polish it all up. So we take a very support heavy approach when helping you put these dashboards together.
Shane, I think it's fair to say that you were one of the trailblazers of this integration. You probably knocked down a lot of roadblocks for other people, making it easier in their case, I would say.
Oh, well, I'm very aware of my limitations, so try to solve those problems. And I guess pestering all of you guys on phone calls numerous times a week for months on end was my method, at least, to solve some of these integration problems, store everything. But I guess the reality is, like, the actual, my data management and collection and the programming just wasn't efficient enough, and I just wasn't turning things around enough to either report to the players or report to other stakeholders. And essentially, because the passion of mine is in coaching, I just really needed to streamline and automate a lot of the services, which drove a lot of the conversations with you guys and the integration process.
Jack, if you can just jump out of sharing your screen, I'm just going to pull up some details for next week and contact information, things like that. Again, just waiting for any questions to come through. James at fusionsport.com, Hewitt at teambuildr.com, and for those on YouTube, please feel free to drop a comment in below. Really excited, really happy to have this webinar up today, and thank everyone for joining us. I'm just waiting to see if there's any final questions, but while I wait for those questions to pop up, I will put out a special thanks to TeamBuildr for jumping on and doing this integration spotlight, our second integration spotlights within this webinar series, our first strength conditioning platform, to jump on and do this integration spotlight, and of course a special thanks to Shane there from the Melbourne Rebels. Really appreciate both your time. Really appreciate everyone joining us, and we'll see you next week at the times that you can see on the slide. Thank you very much.